Hey folks, welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic with myself, Dave Anderson. I'm technical fellow at Bizarre Voice and author and contributor at the Serverless Edge.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark McCann, architect at Globalization Partners and author and contributor at the Serverless Edge.
Hello, Michael O'Reilly, architect with Globalization Partners and contributor with the Serverless Edge.
Good stuff. So today we figured we'd talk about event-driven architecture, and specifically there was an event on in London a few weeks ago called EDA Day, which I think I was lucky to have the privilege to attend. But it was organized by GOTO and a lot of AWS contributors, and it was really about it was kind of neat because it was one day focused on event-driven architectures, and there was a bit of an AWS slant and a serverless slant. I thought this was fascinating because it just shows the coming together of the 20 or 15-year-old pattern of EDA plus serverless plus all the bigger services on top of that, like Eventbridge and Step Functions. What do you guys think? There's definitely something in the air around event-driven architecture. We've been talking about that for probably about 15 years. It's almost starting to become real.
Yeah, I think a lot of the barriers to entry are starting to be removed. There's a lot more developer-friendly sort of services and capabilities that they can explore and experiment with. So the feedback loop and the iteration cycles of, hey, I want to try EDA is quicker now, right? So you can fire up Eventbridge, you can use SNS, SQS, we've codified a lot of these patterns and CDK patterns, and they're in serverless land. So I think they're a lot more approachable now than they ever were, and a lot more practical now than they ever were. So you can rapidly experiment with them. So yeah, I think the timing is perfect for an EDA day and bringing all that together.
Yeah, I know. Like I definitely feel, I don't know if it's like a modern thing but when you think about things like team topologies and how you organize around your domains and domain-driven design, I think the industry's kind of come on a wee bit in recent years. It's easier to own an area of a platform, I'd say, in this space than it ever was, and then when you think about how those sorts of teams should be set up and how they should interact and how they should kind of move from one area to the other, I kind of feel like the EDAs, we can do that now because of the sort of the leveraging EDA and event-driven approaches to organizational design or product design as well. So I definitely think we're in a way better spot than we were a few years back in relation to that. No?
I think the penny dropped around high performing teams and loose coupling and building for rapid product delivery, right? These are critical right now. So EDA fits the bill for that.
So I mean, if you're interested in the day itself, we'll just Google. It's GOTO, who organize the great conferences. GOTO Amsterdam, GOTO Copenhagen, etc. So if you Google GOTO EDA Day, you'll see there's a bunch of stuff there. You can download slides. And you're right, Mike. I mean, the thing. I mean, I remember us talking about this 15 years ago. We think of people like Gregor Hohpe, who first wrote the pattern up EDA Day. It's the first person I'd seen write it up. And Eric Evans talked about domain-driven design. I remember speaking to those people 15 years ago, and it was like, this is a cool idea, but it'd be so hard to do. It was just you needed like a huge team to do it. Now you can spin these things up pretty quickly. And that leads to the day itself, because Gregor Hohpe actually did the keynote talk, and I think it was called I made everything loosely coupled. Does my app fall apart? And he set the scene really well. I mean, Gregor is now an AWS enterprise strategist, and he talked about the whole event kind of landscape and all the complexities behind event-driven and architectures. And he had this diagram called A calls B, and it looked pretty simple. And then like the million things you need to think about when A calls B. So it's a lot of really interesting stuff. And he's not just like selling AWS. He's basically saying there's a million ways to do this. You got to pick the right way. I mean, he's always a great way of talking about things.
Yeah, I kind of feel like whenever we're kind of getting into the topics in the book, and you're talking about like building momentum and next best action, you got to be able to kind of assemble these systems in a composable fashion, and that definitely requires a lot of discipline. We kind of harp on a lot about well architected and adopting kind of good design practices, and some of the talks we'll probably get on to later is maybe around like how do you do, domain modeling in this kind of way. But it's difficult, and it definitely requires a certain degree of rigor. Even earlier on today, we were having conversations around eventing within the box and eventing across, the box, internal, external eventing. So there's a lot of engineering rigor and design kind of challenge there to do it right. But again, the whole notion of serverless, we're saying about rapid delivery is that you can embrace that and just move fast, iterate, rapidly increment, change, pivot, do whatever you need to do to kind of work within that. But again, it all harks back to what we're talking about around engineering rigor and well architected.
I think one of the big differentiators, I guess, now is that a lot of these things are codified in patterns now that are readily available. I know Gregor talked about it in his talk, but you have these composable building blocks that you can build upon. You're not starting from first principles of event-driven architecture. You're able to leverage these higher order building blocks to rapidly sort of build an event-driven architecture, which is great.
Yeah, and the thing was that Gregor put it really well. He said there was almost like three languages. He called it like a cloud native serverless domain. What he's really talking about, you've got the business domain for how you talk about the business domain as a business person, the eventing architecture, which you talk about as an architect, and then the cloud native area, which you talk about as a cloud engineer, which is all like, so it's DDD, like all the event sort of framework, and then like CDK he talked about for the automation of things. So having those three languages was separate in how you talk, and then bring them together at the end was brilliant. It was a cracking talk to kind of kick it off.
Awesome.
And then go ahead, sorry.
I was just saying awesome. I wish I could actually sit through Gregor's talk.
It's brilliant. He's brilliant. And then they did a whole bunch of stuff wrong. One of the neat things we've mentioned quickly, one of the developer advocates, a guy called Julian Wood, who's worth looking up on Twitter, definitely. Him and I think it's Ben Smith and a few of them from Serverless Land put together this kind of demo called Serverless Espresso. I can never say it, Serverless Espresso, where you can scan a barcode and there's a whole event-driven step function Eventbridge sequence that there's a barista stand there. They like get the thing through and they make you a coffee. So it sounds really simple, but you can watch the whole thing happening. So that's a great lab as well. So if you look up AWS labs, you'll see that Serverless Espresso, and it's really well put together for this is how you build an event-driven architecture from the ground up.
I mean, that's the big thing, isn't it? That's the main difference. Is like, even 5 years ago, if you wanted to do something like that, you're like it's Kafka or something hefty and overpowered and completely unfit for what you're wanting to do, or some sort of queue, and then it's who owns the queue and who's going to run the queue, and so it's the pattern thing is so powerful. I think once people get their hands on that stuff, there's no going back.
Yeah, and I think in the past those things would have been cost prohibitive, and developers would have run a mile before they tried to fire that up in their own account. But I think with the low cost serverless options now, you can rapidly do this. You can quickly do this, and you're not worried about running about hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of AWS costs.
Yeah,
that's it. So another really good speaker was a guy, Ben Ellerby. And Ben's brilliant. Ben worked in Theodore, and he's got he's an AWS serverless hero. So he's this thing about minimal viable migrations. A lot of people think event-driven is like a greenfield thing. It's only a brand new thing, but he had a great talk about when you have an existing architecture and you're going to event-driven. So he talked about just doing a small part of your architecture, kind of bit by bit. It's a nice incremental model.
Yeah, I think his article on Eventbridge storming is essential reading for anyone trying to build out an event-driven architecture. I think it's taken what the event storming sort of work from Alberto Brandolini, and really adding that Eventbridge sort of implementation detail to it is a fantastic blog post. So it's well worth checking that out as well.
And Ben's got a cracking now. The company he founded now within Theodore is called Helios, where they do a lot of that extra stuff. So they're well worth a look. See how they get on a lot of brilliant content there. And then actually another guy called David Boyne, who's done a whole bunch of stuff. He's joined AWS now. He's done a whole bunch of stuff around kind of awesome Eventbridge. He's got a few open source projects, and he did a cracking talk around thinking event first, or the approach events. and around how to get your schemas right and how to really think about your domain model and lock it in from day one. So he's got a bunch of cracking tools as well, worth looking up. His resource on awesome Eventbridge.
Yeah, the event catalog tool he created is awesome as well. And
there's a recent blog he came out with as well around this topic, wasn't there? It was all kind of domain-driven design and things like that. I thought was great, and it's all in line with what you were just saying about Ben as well. You know, the whole event storming and creating your article about your bounded creation your bounded context. And so yeah, I mean I think that'd be really good content if you're in any way interested in this stuff.
It's one of the big advantages of not doing undifferentiated heavy lifting and leveraging as much AWS sort of managed services as possible. They have a whole developer advocate community who are building and documenting and doing workshops and tutorials that we can just leverage. So it's like we're coming across these problems in our own context, and we're able to see that the likes of David is putting out stuff that's very relative and very relatable to what we are seeing internally. So it's great that they're continuing to invest in that developer advocacy community, because it's been a great resource for us, and the work that's done in serverless land as well has been
Awesome.
fantastic, right?
And you know what the best thing is, right? Like, we've all worked with lots and lots of software vendors in the past, and usually the labs are like secret sauce.
Yeah.
You pay us lots of money, you can get access to the lab, and it'll be great, and you can see the lab, and it's the big secret. These guys are all just sticking them online for nothing. It's like GitHub for free. You want the lab? There it is. Download it yourself. Do it yourself, please.
Yeah.
So it's there's a great sort of democratization of this information, which I think is brilliant. You don't need to be, we're not all privileged enough to travel and get in big expensive training courses. Sometimes you just want to just grab something, have a look at it. Another great speaker was Marcia Valaba. She has a lot of really brilliant content. She's one of the developer advocates as well with AWS. She's got a lot of cracking content on kind of good practices and getting started. I think she's a really nice way of explaining a lot of these concepts. One thing I'm always a bit nervous around about event-driven and domain-driven is people who are really good at it tend to get very complicated very quickly and lose everyone. But Marcy's a super way of bringing these concepts across and helping out just what I would call kind of normal teams, which is every team.
Yeah. Looks like it was a good talk. Like, I mean, that's something we kind of try and coach in our engineers, kind of backing up what she's saying, just around the observability, being able to trace these things through through their workflows and their lifespan. So it sounds like it was a good one to watch.
Yeah, and I would definitely check out our serverless, FreeBar serverless channel on YouTube. Tons and tons and tons of really developer friendly, even beginner friendly, and more advanced stuff content. It's a fantastic resource. It's one of my YouTube subscriptions that I watch quite regularly.
One of many. Very good. And then probably the last one to talk about is Lego. I think they sponsored the event, but they had 2 talks. But I thought Sarah Hamilton is one of the software engineers, and she gave a really good talk about, some of the more advanced techniques they're using, and they have a whole event-driven architecture. My friend Sheen Basalis was speaking as well, but they have a fantastic story, which is well worth hearing, about how they moved to an event-driven service architecture, and it's certainly it's a brilliant story to hear, and they tell it really well. I thought Sarah did a brilliant talk on some of the more advanced stuff. And there's a whole socio-technical element to this, to how you organize your teams and the attitude and stuff, and really is what I would call a core engineering competency and mindset, as opposed to just an architectural pattern. So I think Lego tell that story brilliantly.
Yeah, one of the big things about the Lego approach is it's very much based on user needs, and they're very good at articulating the need that they're trying to solve, and then what pattern or what technology they're bringing to bear to solve it. And Change blog and the Lego engineering blog has been great at sort of sharing their learnings, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, I was going through that. I was just skimming through the slides. I haven't watched the talk yet, but it sounds as if they're kind of doing it at scale as well. So like they're streaming in Kinesis and things like that, and so they're good at scale. I've never managed to kind of get a good use case for Kinesis. At the minute, with a lot of my experience is kind of still around the SQS, SNS, and we're just getting into Eventbridge and stuff now. So it's good to see that there's teams out there kind of pushing this one along, and definitely it's good to see.
Yeah,
these
things are hitting massive scale. So I mean that was actually their entry. Not to spoil the talk, but that was their entry point. Scale. It was a Black Friday event. But it's brilliant to hear how they kind of put all that together.
I think that's your thing too. I mean, I don't know if Ben Ellery kind of got into it, but like you find a lot of these sort of technologies and services, it does facilitate you kind of learning the trade a wee bit of EDA. You know, so you maybe start off basic and sort of just use basic SNS, SQS, and then evolve into Eventbridge, and then when you're going up a next level, you can kind of learn about Kinesis, and it all kind of supports that, you know, that evolution, that evolutionary architecture as well, which is kind of another benefit of EDA. So it's good to see, you know, different teams at different kind of periods in their evolution and kind of leveraging the tech in very different ways, which is awesome. So it's really interesting topic.
I always think from yesteryear, the design you need to do for an EDA is the most difficult thing, to get the design right and figure out some of those things. But if you can get it working at a basic level, if you build it yourself from the ground up, you'll get it working at a basic level. But then when you start to scale, you have to start to re-architect the thing on the fly. That's really, really difficult. But now with this more kind of modern approach, you can spend your time on the design, and when the scale comes, like, you know, the tools will have it there for you. You'll still have to tweak a few things, but at least you know that Eventbridge isn't going to fall over with a wee bit of concurrency. No, that the thing will probably scale faster than you can. So you're not going to, you wouldn't be stuck with that same thing if you were just hand cranking a load of messages flinging around. I've done that in the past, hand cranking message things. It's not, doesn't get pretty when you get scale.
No, it certainly doesn't. You know, reliability is a big kind of topic in those event-driven systems, and I think the low operational burden definitely gives you a wee bit more time to focus on reliability and quality. You know,
yeah, you don't want to be sitting worrying about size of queues and buffers and all that stuff.
No, definitely not. No,
disaster.
Help it.
On that, sit up all night watching queues. Then the event ended then with there was a panel with some of the product leaders from Eventbridge, Step Functions, and MongoDB were there as well. Like I think as one of the sponsors. So that was a really relaxed panel. And Emily Shea, who's we know well, she kind of was in that as well. Like I think she's go to market for serverless, and it was just a really relaxed chat, and like no one's pushing any tools, just kind of shooting the breeze about good practice and what's coming and stuff. So it was a nice kind of vibe, the event, just to talk about. It was almost like the evolution of event-driven architecture and that nice kind of tie-in with serverless. So I definitely think there's something in it. I don't want to say serverless is becoming EDA or EDA is becoming serverless, but there's serverless definitely enables EDA for sure.
Yeah, there's huge synergies there. Absolutely.
Definitely is. So I would take a look at GOTO, and I think GOTO Play will have a lot of the videos. Definitely the website in the schedule. If you click in some of the speakers, a lot of them have the slides there. But I think the actual talks will only come out on the GOTO Play. I think it's a YouTube channel over the next couple of weeks. So we'll credit the GOTO for doing that. So that's the crack with EDA. Thanks for listening, and give us a follow on the Serverless Edge at Twitter. Check out the blog at theserverlessedge.com, and thanks for watching.
Thanks everyone.
Everybody.